Nora Green hadn't expected to find herself standing on the polished deck of a 300-foot superyacht when she'd answered the enigmatic job advertisement for a personal chef. But here she was, clutching her knife roll to her chest, trying to look professional while the Mediterranean breeze played with her chestnut hair. "You're late." The voice was deep, authoritative, and belonged to a tall man with piercing blue eyes and dark hair that looked like it fought with his stylist daily. "I'm exactly on time, actually," Nora replied, checking her watch. "Your email said 10 o'clock. The man raised an eyebrow, then checked his own watch, a timepiece that probably cost more than Nora's culinary school loans. His expression shifted subtly from annoyance to something resembling respect, so it did. "Wyatt Thorne," he said, extending his hand. "Welcome to the Midas." The name suddenly clicked. Wyatt Thorne, the shipping magnate whose business acumen had transformed his grandfather's modest freight company into a global maritime empire. His net worth was rumored to be north of $8 billion, and now he was her potential employer. "Nora Green," she said, taking his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "Thank you for considering my application. Your resume was impressive. 3 years at Lumiere in Paris, a stint at the Savoy in London, and references from 2 Michelin-starred chefs." He gestured toward a sleek lounge area. "Tell me why you'd leave all that to cook on a yacht." Nora followed him, taking in the opulent surroundings. The yacht was a masterpiece of design, all clean lines, polished surfaces, and panoramic views of the Côte d'Azur. "I believe in experiences," she said, settling into a plush chair across from him. "Restaurant kitchens are intense, demanding, and often toxic. I've proven myself there. Now I want to create food in a more intimate setting where I can truly connect with the people I'm cooking for." Wyatt studied her, his expression unreadable. "And the fact that this position pays triple what you'd make as a sous chef had nothing to do with it," Nora smiled. "I won't pretend the compensation isn't attractive. But money alone wouldn't get me to uproot my life and move onto a yacht with strangers." "Fair enough," Wyatt conceded. "The position is for 3 months initially. I have important clients coming aboard and the food needs to be exceptional. My last chef left rather abruptly. May I ask why?" "Creative differences," Wyatt said flatly. Something in his tone suggested there was more to the story, but Nora didn't press. "I need someone who can adapt, who understands that flexibility is as important as technical skill. Can you handle that, Miss Green?" "I once prepared a 7-course tasting menu during a power outage using camping equipment," Nora replied. "Flexibility is my specialty." For the first time, Wyatt's serious expression cracked into something like a smile. "Well then, let's see what you can do. The kitchen is fully stocked. Prepare something that showcases your philosophy as a chef. I have calls to make, but I'll be back in an hour." With that, he stood and left Nora alone in the lounge. She took a deep breath, gathered her knife roll, and went in search of the kitchen. The galley was state-of-the-art, a chef's dream with top-of-the-line equipment and endless counter space. Nora explored the pantry and refrigerators, finding them indeed well-stocked with premium ingredients. Her mind raced with possibilities. An hour later, Wyatt returned to find Nora plating a deceptively simple dish. Perfectly seared scallops with brown butter, cauliflower 3 ways, and a drizzle of aged balsamic. "This is what you came up with?" he asked, eyeing the plate with skepticism. "Food doesn't need to be complicated to be excellent," Nora replied. "Sometimes the most impressive thing is knowing when to let perfect ingredients speak for themselves." Wyatt took a seat at the dining table and picked up his fork. Nora held her breath as he tasted her creation, watching his expression carefully. After what seemed like an eternity, he set down his fork. "When can you start?" he asked. "I'm available immediately." "Good. We sail tomorrow at noon. Parker will show you to your quarters and go over the details of your contract." And just like that, Nora was hired. A slender, efficient man named Parker appeared as if summoned by magic and led her through the labyrinthine interior of the yacht. Her quarters were small but luxurious, with a porthole window offering a view of the harbor. Mr. Thorne typically takes breakfast at 7, lunch at 1, and dinner at 8, Parker explained, handing her a tablet. This contains information about the guests who will be joining us, along with any dietary restrictions or preferences. Mr. Thorne expects excellence, Miss Green. I hope you're prepared for that. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't, Nora replied confidently. That night, as she unpacked her belongings and settled into her new temporary home, Nora wondered what she'd gotten herself into. The yacht was beautiful, the job paid exceedingly well, but there was something about Wyatt Thorne that unsettled her. He wasn't just intense, he seemed isolated, even lonely, despite his wealth and success. Not your problem, Nora, she muttered to herself as she hung her chef's coats in the small closet. You're here to cook, not psychoanalyze the billionaire. Morning came early on the Mitas. Nora was in the kitchen by 5:30, preparing a selection of fresh pastries and planning the day's menu. By 7, she had arranged a beautiful breakfast spread in the main dining area. Fresh fruit, homemade granola, yogurt parfaits, eggs Benedict, and still warm croissants. Wyatt arrived at 7 sharp, dressed casually in linen pants and a light blue button-down that somehow made his eyes appear even more intensely blue. He paused at the sight of the spread. Good morning, Nora greeted him. Coffee? Black, thank you, he replied, taking a seat. You didn't need to prepare all this. I usually just have coffee and toast. Nora poured his coffee from a silver carafe. First impressions matter. Besides, we're sailing today. You'll need proper fuel. Wyatt looked amused. Are you always this bossy with your employers? Only when it comes to their nutritional well-being, Nora replied with a smile. To her surprise, Wyatt laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face and made him look younger, more approachable. Fair enough, he said, helping himself to the eggs Benedict. What's on the menu for lunch? I thought a light seafood paella, given we'll be at sea, unless you'd prefer something else. Wyatt took a bite of his breakfast and closed his eyes briefly, savoring it. When he opened them again, he looked at Nora with newfound appreciation. I think I'll trust your judgment, Miss Green. Please call me Nora. Nora, he repeated, and something about the way he said her name made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. They set sail at noon, as scheduled. Nora was prepared for seasickness. She'd cooked on smaller vessels before, but the Mitas cut through the waves with barely a tremor. She served the promised paella for lunch, which Wyatt ate alone on the aft deck, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial reports. By the third day, Nora had settled into a rhythm. Wyatt was a creature of habit, she discovered. He woke at 6 to exercise, took breakfast at 7, worked through most of the day with only brief breaks, and then often stood alone on the deck in the evenings, nursing a glass of scotch and staring out at the horizon. On the 4th night, as Nora was cleaning the kitchen after dinner, Wyatt appeared in the doorway. Do you ever take time off? He asked. Nora looked up from the pot she was scrubbing. I wasn't aware I had time off scheduled. You're entitled to evenings after dinner service and 1 full day each week, Wyatt said. It's in your contract. I know, but there's always prep work to do for the next day, Nora explained. Besides, it's not like I can go anywhere while we're at sea. Wyatt looked troubled. You should still rest. Come have a drink with me on the deck. The stars are incredible tonight. Nora hesitated. Was this appropriate? He was her boss, after all, but the invitation seemed innocent enough, and she was curious about the man behind the billions. All right, she agreed. Let me just finish up here. 20 minutes later, she joined Wyatt on the upper deck. He had changed from his business attire into more casual clothes, jeans, and a simple black t-shirt that hinted at a well-maintained physique. He handed her a glass of wine as she approached. Shadow Margox 2015, he said. I thought you might appreciate it given your culinary background. Nora took the glass, their fingers brushing briefly. Thank you, this is extremely generous. It's just wine, Wyatt shrugged, but the bottle probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, gazing at the star-strewn sky above and the phosphorescent wake of the yacht below. The sea air was cool and clean, carrying the faint scent of salt and possibility. "Why a yacht?" Nora asked eventually. "You could have homes all over the world. Why live on the water?" Wyatt swirled his scotch thoughtfully. "Freedom, maybe, the ability to wake up somewhere new whenever I want. Or perhaps it's because the ocean doesn't care who you are or what you own. It treats everyone the same." "That's surprisingly poetic for a businessman," Nora observed. "I contain multitudes," Wyatt replied with a hint of self-mockery. "What about you?" "What drives someone to spend their life cooking for others?" Nora considered the question. "Food is connection. It's memory and comfort and discovery all at once. When I cook for someone, I'm giving them more than sustenance. I'm giving them an experience, a moment of joy." Wyatt studied her face in the soft lighting of the deck. "That's why your food is different. You actually care about the people eating it." "Of course I do. What would be the point otherwise?" The conversation flowed easily after that. They talked about their childhoods, his privileged but lonely, hers modest but warm. They discussed travel, books, films. Wyatt revealed a surprising knowledge of art history while Nora shared stories from her culinary adventures around the world. It was past midnight when they finally parted ways, both reluctant to end the conversation but aware of the early morning ahead. "Thank you for the wine," Nora said as they reached the point where their paths diverged. "Thank you for the company," Wyatt replied, his voice softer than she'd heard it before. "Good night, Nora." "Good night, Wyatt." As she prepared for bed, Nora tried to dismiss the warmth she felt in his presence as simple professional camaraderie. But deep down, she knew it was more complicated than that. The next week passed in a blur of breathtaking destinations. They anchored off Portofino, Monaco, and Ibiza, each stop more beautiful than the last. Wyatt conducted business during the days, sometimes bringing clients aboard for lunch or dinner, which gave Nora the chance to showcase her culinary creativity. She noticed that Wyatt was different with his business associates, cooler, more calculating, less of the thoughtful man she glimpsed during their evening conversations, which had become a regular occurrence. It was as though he wore a mask for the rest of the world and only removed it in those quiet moments under the stars. In Ibiza, Wyatt invited Nora to accompany him ashore for the local farmers' market. "Consider it a reconnaissance mission," he'd said. "Find ingredients that inspire you." The market was a riot of colors, scents, and sounds. Nora moved from stall to stall, examining produce, chatting with vendors in her decent Spanish, and filling a basket with treasures: saffron, fresh seafood, heirloom tomatoes, local honey. Wyatt followed a step behind, watching her with undisguised fascination. "You're in your element here," he observed. "Markets are the heartbeat of a place," Nora replied, holding up a perfectly ripe fig for his inspection. "You can learn more about a culture from their markets than from any guidebook." Impulsively, she broke the fig in half and offered him a piece. Wyatt hesitated, then accepted it, their fingers touching again in a way that sent a current through Nora's arm. He bit into the fruit, and a drop of juice clung to his lower lip. Without thinking, Nora reached up and wiped it away with her thumb. The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken possibility. Then someone bumped into Nora from behind, breaking the spell. She stepped back, suddenly aware of their proximity, of the public setting, of the line she'd nearly crossed. "We should head back," she said, her voice not quite steady. "I want to start preparing the octopus for tonight." Wyatt nodded, his expression guarded again. "Of course." That evening, for the first time since their ritual began, Wyatt didn't join Nora on the deck after dinner. She told herself it was for the best, that maintaining professional boundaries was important, but she missed their conversation more than she cared to admit. The next morning, they departed for Sardinia. Nora was in the kitchen, prepping for lunch, when a storm hit. The Midas was large enough that the waves weren't dangerous, but the motion was still unsettling. Pots rattled on their hooks, and Nora had to brace herself against the counter as she worked. Wyatt appeared in the doorway, looking concerned. "You should take a break until this passes. It's not safe to be working with knives in these conditions." "I've handled worse," Nora assured him. "Besides, people still need to eat, storm or no storm." No sooner had the words left her mouth than the yacht pitched sharply. Nora lost her footing and stumbled forward, directly into Wyatt's arms. He caught her easily, his hands steady on her waist. "You were saying," he said, a smile playing at his lips. Nora was acutely aware of his proximity, of the warmth of his hands through the thin material of her chef's coat, of the subtle scent of his cologne mingling with the aromas of the kitchen. "Perhaps a short break wouldn't hurt," she conceded. They made their way to the main lounge, where the motion of the yacht was less pronounced. Nora sank gratefully into one of the plush sofas, and to her surprise, Wyatt sat beside her rather than taking one of the many other available seats. "Tell me something I don't know about you," he said, turning to face her. Nora thought for a moment. "I'm terrified of heights, which is ironic given how many tall kitchen shelves I've had to climb in my career." "Yet you're fearless in a storm at sea," Wyatt observed. "Interesting contradiction." "What about you?" Nora asked. "Tell me something the financial pages don't know about Wyatt Thorne." Wyatt's expression turned contemplative. "I can't swim." "What?" Nora stared at him in disbelief. "But you live on a yacht, hence the irony," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "I've tried learning multiple times, it's never taken, I just don't float naturally." "So if you fell overboard?" "There are safety protocols in place," Wyatt assured her. "The crew knows." Nora shook her head, amazed. "That's actually rather brave, living surrounded by your greatest fear." "Or foolish," Wyatt countered. "My therapist would have a field day with it." They both laughed, and something shifted between them. The conversation turned to deeper topics, their hopes, their regrets, the paths not taken. Wyatt revealed that, despite his success, he sometimes wondered if he'd built his empire at too great a personal cost. Nora confessed her fears that her pursuit of culinary excellence had left little room for lasting relationships. "You regret it?" Wyatt asked. "The sacrifices you've made for your career," Nora considered the question carefully. "No," she said finally. "I love what I do, but sometimes I wonder if there's room for both passion for your work and passion in your personal life." "I used to think there wasn't," Wyatt admitted. "That it had to be one or the other. And now," he met her gaze directly, "now I'm not so sure." The storm passed eventually, but something had changed between them. Their evening conversations resumed, growing longer and more intimate. They began to seek each other out during the day as well. Wyatt would bring his laptop to the kitchen while Nora worked, or she would join him for coffee on the bridge as he charted their course. 2 weeks into their voyage, they docked in Santorini. The whitewashed buildings of the Greek island gleamed against the azure sky, creating a postcard-perfect vista. "I have meetings all day," Wyatt told Nora over breakfast, "but you should take some time ashore, explore the island." "Are you sure?" Nora asked. "I was planning to prepare for tomorrow's dinner party." "The party can wait," Wyatt insisted. "Consider it an order from your employer." Nora spent the day wandering the narrow streets of Oya, sampling local delicacies and taking in the breathtaking views. She bought spices, olive oil, and a jar of local honey for the yacht's pantry. As the sun began to set, painting the whitewashed buildings in shades of gold and rose, she found a small taverna with a view of the caldera and ordered a glass of wine. She was so engrossed in the beauty of the sunset that she didn't notice someone approaching until they spoke. "Mind if I join you?" Nora looked up to find Wyatt standing beside her table, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in a simple linen shirt and khaki shorts. "What happened to your meetings?" she asked, surprised but pleased. "They ended early," he said, taking the seat across from her, "and I thought, well, it seemed a shame to watch this sunset alone." The waiter brought another glass of wine, and they sat in companionable silence as the sun sank below the horizon, turning the sky into a canvas of purples and pinks. "Beautiful," Wyatt murmured, But when Nora turned, she found him looking not at the sunset but at her. Her heart skipped a beat. "Wyatt, I know," he said quietly. "This is complicated. I'm your employer. There are power dynamics at play. But Nora, I can't pretend I don't feel something when I'm with you." Nora took a deep breath. "I feel it too, but I've worked too hard to be taken seriously as a chef. I can't be the woman who slept her way into a position." "I would never think of you that way," Wyatt said earnestly. "Your talent is undeniable. It's one of the things I admire most about you." "But others would," Nora pointed out, "and professional reputations are fragile things." Wyatt nodded slowly, accepting her point. "What if I wasn't your employer? But you are. Contracts can be amended," he suggested. "We could bring on another chef for the remainder of the voyage. You could stay as my guest." The idea was tempting more than tempting, but Nora shook her head. "That would feel like cheating. I accepted this position in good faith. I need to see it through." Wyatt looked disappointed but not surprised. "I respect that. Your integrity is another thing I admire about you." They finished their wine and walked back to the harbor together, careful to maintain a respectable distance between them despite the magnetic pull they both felt. When they reached the yacht, Wyatt paused at the gangway. 3 more weeks, he said softly. "Then your contract ends and you're free to make whatever choice feels right to you. No expectations, no pressure." Nora nodded, touched by his understanding. 3 weeks. The following days were a delicate dance of attraction and restraint. They maintained their professional relationship during the day, with Nora focusing on creating exceptional meals for Wyatt and his occasional guests. Their evening conversations continued, but with a new awareness humming beneath the surface. The yacht continued its journey through the Greek islands, stopping at Mykonos, Crete, and Rhodes. At each destination, Wyatt made sure Nora had time to explore, to gather inspiration for her cooking. Sometimes he joined her, sometimes not, always respecting the boundaries they'd established. One evening, as they sailed between islands, Nora was putting the finishing touches on a dessert, a delicate baklava with honey from Santorini and pistachios from Aegina, when she heard soft music coming from the upper deck. Curious, she finished her work and went to investigate. The deck had been transformed. Strings of fairy lights created a canopy of stars, and a small table was set for 2, with candles casting a warm glow over fine china and crystal. Wyatt stood beside the table, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Too much?" he asked when he saw her expression. "What is this?" Nora asked, though she already knew. "Dinner," Wyatt said simply. "I thought it was time someone cooked for you for a change." "You cooked?" Nora couldn't hide her surprise. "God, no," Wyatt laughed. "Parker helped me order from a restaurant in the last port." "But I did set the table myself." Nora approached slowly, taking in the beautiful setting. "This is lovely, but it's just dinner between friends," Wyatt assured her. "I promise, no expectations." Relieved and touched by his thoughtfulness, Nora allowed him to pull out her chair. The meal was excellent, not up to her standards, perhaps, but made special by the thought behind it and the company. They talked and laughed under the stars, and when Wyatt asked her to dance to the soft music playing from hidden speakers, Nora didn't resist. They moved together on the deck, his hand warm at the small of her back, her head eventually coming to rest against his shoulder. It felt right, being in his arms, as though she'd found a place she didn't know she'd been looking for. "Nora," Wyatt murmured against her hair. "I'm falling in love with you." She pulled back enough to look into his eyes, finding nothing but sincerity there. "Wyatt, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens when we dock in Athens, whether you stay or go, these weeks with you have changed me." Nora's heart was pounding. She'd been fighting her feelings for weeks, trying to maintain professional distance, but in that moment, all her reservations seemed trivial compared to the truth of what she felt. "I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted softly. "And it terrifies me." Wyatt cupped her face in his hands, his touch reverent. "Why does it frighten you?" "Because I've never felt this way before," Nora confessed. "Because it's happened so quickly. Because you're you and I'm me, and our worlds are so different. Do you think I care about any of that? Wyatt asked. Nora, do you know what I see when I look at you? I see someone passionate, talented, and completely authentic. Someone who doesn't need my money or my name, who had a full, successful life before I came along. That's rare in my world. Nora leaned into his touch, overwhelmed by his words and her own emotions. What happens now? Now, Wyatt said, his voice low and tender, I would very much like to kiss you, if that's all right. In answer, Nora rose onto her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. But when Wyatt's arms tightened around her waist, pulling her closer, the kiss deepened into something more urgent, more profound, a conversation without words, an understanding beyond language. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the day you corrected me about being late. Nora laughed softly. I've wanted you to since the farmer's market in Ibiza. They stayed on the deck until the early hours, talking, kissing, planning. They agreed to keep their relationship private until the end of Nora's contract, to avoid any appearance of impropriety among the crew. After Athens, they would take things day by day, seeing where their connection led them without the complications of their professional relationship. The final 2 weeks of the voyage were a sweet agony of hidden glances, brushing hands in the kitchen, and stolen moments of privacy. By day, Nora was the consummate professional chef. By night, she was a woman falling deeply in love. The night before they were scheduled to dock in Athens, marking the official end of Nora's contract, Wyatt invited her to the upper deck after the crew had retired. I have something to ask you, he said, taking her hands in his. And I want you to know that there's no pressure. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Nora's heart raced. What is it? When we dock tomorrow, I have to fly to New York for meetings, Wyatt explained. I'd like you to come with me. To New York, Nora repeated, surprised. What about the yacht? The Midas will be in dry dock for some scheduled maintenance, Wyatt said. We'd stay at my apartment. It would give us a chance to see if what we feel here translates to the real world. Nora hesitated. It was a big step and quick. I'd need to think about it. Of course, Wyatt nodded. Take all the time you need. The offer stands regardless. The next morning, as the Midas approached Athens harbor, Nora made her decision. She found Wyatt on the bridge overseeing their docking procedures. Yes, she said simply. He turned, his expression questioning. Yes, I'll come to New York with you, Nora clarified, but on one condition. Name it. I want to work while we're there, she said firmly. Not as your personal chef, but in my own right. I have contacts in the New York restaurant scene. I could do some guest chef appearances, maybe some consulting work. Relief and joy spread across Wyatt's face. I wouldn't have it any other way. Your career matters to me because it matters to you. 2 days later, they were in New York, settling into Wyatt's penthouse apartment with its spectacular views of Central Park. True to her word, Nora arranged several guest chef appearances at top restaurants, earning critical acclaim and further burnishing her professional reputation. Wyatt attended each of her dinner services, sitting at the chef's table and watching with undisguised pride as Nora commanded the kitchen and created culinary masterpieces. Afterward, they would walk hand in hand through the late-night streets of Manhattan, talking about their days and falling deeper in love. One evening, 3 months into their New York sojourn, Wyatt took Nora to the rooftop garden of his building. A table was set for two, surrounded by potted herbs and twinkling lights. Did you cook? Nora asked skeptically. Actually, yes, Wyatt admitted with a sheepish smile. Well, I tried. It's probably terrible. The meal was indeed imperfect, the pasta slightly overcooked, the sauce a bit too salty, but it was the most meaningful dinner Nora had ever eaten. The fact that Wyatt, who could afford to hire the world's greatest chefs, had chosen to cook for her himself touched her deeply. Over dessert store-bought tiramisu that Wyatt admitted he hadn't attempted to make, he reached across the table and took her hand. These past months have been the happiest of my life, he said earnestly. You've shown me that there's more to living than success and acquisitions. You've taught me to savor experiences, to find joy in simple pleasures. You've changed me too, Nora replied softly. You've helped me see that ambition and love aren't mutually exclusive, that I can have both a career and a relationship that fulfills me. Wyatt squeezed her hand, his expression growing serious. I have another question for you, Nora, one that's been on my mind since that night on the deck in Santorini. Nora's breath caught as Wyatt left his chair and knelt beside her. I had a whole speech prepared, he said, looking up at her with vulnerable sincerity. About how you've brought flavor to my life, how you've seasoned my days with joy, but the truth is simpler than that. I love you, Nora Green. I love your passion, your integrity, your talent. I love who I am when I'm with you, and I would be honored if you would consider becoming my wife. He produced a ring, an elegant emerald surrounded by diamonds, beautiful but not ostentatious. Tears filled Nora's eyes. Wyatt, if it's too soon, I understand, he said quickly. We can wait, take more time, yes, Nora interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. Wyatt's face lit up with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he was kissing her, and Nora was kissing him back, both of them laughing and crying at once. They were married 6 months later on the deck of the Midas, anchored in the same Santorini bay where they had first acknowledged their feelings. The ceremony was intimate, just close friends and family, with Parker serving as best man and Nora's sister as maid of honor. For their honeymoon, they sailed the Mediterranean again, revisiting the ports where their love story had begun. But this time, they took turns in the galley, cooking together and creating new memories alongside the old. 1 year after their wedding, Nora opened her own restaurant in New York, an intimate, critically acclaimed establishment that earned a Michelin star within its first 6 months. Wyatt was her biggest supporter, handling the business side while Nora focused on the culinary artistry. 2 years later, they welcomed twins, a boy and a girl, who inherited their father's blue eyes and their mother's determined spirit. The Midas became a family vessel, with a nursery installed adjacent to the master's suite and child-sized life jackets stored in every cabin. 5 years into their marriage, as they sat on the deck of the yacht watching their children play under the watchful eye of a nanny, Wyatt turned to Nora with a smile. "Do you ever think about that first day?" he asked. "When you stepped aboard and I accused you of being late?" Nora laughed, leaning into his embrace. "Sometimes. I certainly never imagined we'd end up here." "No," Wyatt raised an eyebrow. "I did, not right away perhaps, but after that first meal you prepared the scallops. I remember thinking that anyone who could create something that perfect must be pretty special themselves." "And now?" Nora asked, tilting her face up to his. "Now," Wyatt said, kissing her softly, "I know I was right. And I'm grateful every day that I had the good sense to hire a personal chef for my yacht, even though I never thought I'd end up wanting her forever." "Forever," Nora echoed, resting her head against his shoulder as they watched the sun setting over the sea, painting the horizon in the same colors as their first sunset in Santorini. "I like the sound of that."